it's also got deniability. You can say, I'm not necessarily preparing to invade. I'm doing, maneuvers inside my own borders. I'm doing training.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, whoever.
This is Rebecca.
Can you hear me, Miss Quiggle?
Yes, I can.
And is Miss Bear there too?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. We're going to get We're going to get started now. Madam Clerk, call roll, please. You got to hit.
Mr. Newton? Here. Mr. Bush? Here. Ms. Abear?
Here.
Ms. Quiggle?
Present.
Mr. Hilton? Ms. Anthony stepped away. Mr. Dale Diddens? Kurt Copleen? Mr. Newton? Mr. Tombson? Did I mute that? Mr. Hilton? Mr. Schroeder.
Present.
Mr. Flegel.
Present.
Mr. Wire.
Present.
Mr. Jogerst.
Present.
Ms. Baker. Mr. Helms. Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Clay.
Here.
And Mr. Mark Diddens is absent. Chairman Hadley.
Here.
One vacant seat and one absent.
Okay, we got a quorum. At this time, Mr. Hilton will lead us in prayer, Miss Anthony in the pledge. Amen. Allegiance to the flag
Flag
of
of
the
the
United States
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
I pray.
I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda by Mr. Helms, second by Mr. Newton. Any discussion? I see none. Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Mr. Helms. Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Clay. Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
Aye.
Ms. Quiggle.
Aye.
Mr. Hilton. Ms. Anthony stepped away. Mr. Dale Diddens.
Aye.
Mr. Copleen.
Aye.
Mr. Tombson.
Aye.
Mr. Schroeder.
Aye.
Mr. Flegel.
Aye.
Mr. Wire. Mr. Jogerst.
Aye.
Ms. Baker. Chairman Hadley.
Yes.
20 present, one stepped away.
Okay. It passes. Okay. Madam Clerk, read the consent agenda, please.
Approval of the January 2022 minutes. Receipt of the fourth quarter 2021 Comcast franchise fees in the amount of $11,755.18. Claims in the total of $702,452.09. Approval of HD 22-3 tandem axle cab and chassis. Approval of HD 22-4 spring weight limits. Approval of HD 22-6 federal participation for 2006122-00BR. Approval of HD 2207 tandem axle cab and chassis, and approval of HD 22-8 federal participation for 20-00185-10-PP for seal coat.
At this time, does anybody want to remove anything from the consent agenda? Mr. Clay, go ahead.
Number C.
Number C. Okay. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Helms. You want that removed? Yes. D. So C and D's been removed, so I need a motion for A, B, E, F, G, and H. Motion approved by Mr. Schroeder, second by Dale Diddens. Okay, Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Jogurst. Ms. Baker. Mr. Helms. Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller. Mr. Clay.
Aye.
Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
yes,
Ms. Quiggle. Ms. Quiggle. Mr. Hilton. Ms. Anthony stepped away. Mr. Dale Diddens. Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson. Chairman Hadley.
Yes.
Two absent, so 8-19.
Yeah, 19 passes. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
So for letter
It was actually.
so they were already.
On the agenda to approve D when we met. After looking at the bids and realizing that the second bid wouldn't give us a vehicle until the following year. We went ahead and put G on the agenda so that we could get that approved and going as well, because lead times are getting further and further out. And so being able to reserve a truck for the following year that we would pay for at that time seemed desirable. This is much like the oil truck where we're buying it before the budget is set, with the understanding from the seller that if we can't have it, if we can't afford it, it will go somewhere else. But the lead time on these trucks is getting longer and longer, and it requires us to get it out ahead of time.
So there was only one bid.
2203 and 2207 were the same bid.
So I guess what was included with the packet.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
That is correct. Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second,
D and,
here,
hold on, D,
you meant C.
I'm sorry, C and D.
C and D, motion by Mr. Helms and second by Mr. Miller. Okay, Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Mr. Helms.
Aye.
Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Clay.
No.
Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
yes,
Ms. Quiggle. Mr. Hilton. Ms. Anthony is still away. Mr. Dale Diddens. Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson.
We have
Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Yogurst. Ms. Baker. One nay, two absent.
No, and myself, yes.
Chairman Hadley.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Total.
18.
18-1. 18-1, it passed. Okay, at this time, we're going to move the public comment and they'll have 3 minutes. So anybody in the audience at this time wants to do a public comment, you have 3 minutes. You can come up to the podium to this mic and state your name, and you have 3 minutes for public comment.
please tilt the screen so we can see.
Is this?
My name is Omar Javed, and I've spoken to a lot of you already. 3 weeks ago, my landlord's Wisher Properties, the furnace went out, wasn't working properly. I was without a proper working furnace for better part of a week. I contacted the health department and you guys did nothing to help me out. They did nothing at all. I was in contact with the health department and the mayor of Rock City. They both kept putting the responsibility of an home inspection on everyone else. It was nobody's problem but theirs or but mine. I contacted Prairie State Legal. They combed the health department website and codes and policies and found out that according to section 218, I should have had an inspection done immediately. I'm living in a house with mold. I got floors that are falling apart. I can't get to the basement because it freezes shut. I got a lot of problems. And Craig Biantima is friends with my landlords. And also my landlord has a brother that used to be a county sheriff. So they're getting away with everything. He's made sexual comments towards me about me and my girlfriend multiple times. I've been there for 9 years and I've had threats of eviction if I said anything. I got a friend helping me out with a place to live now. So now it's on you guys to do your jobs. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else in the public want to make public comment at this time? Okay, did anybody email any public comments in?
None that we have received prior to
Okay,
the deadline.
anybody on Zoom at this time want to make, Mr. Clay, you want to make public comment? Yeah, go ahead up to the mic then, please.
My name is Jerry Clay, County Board Member. You all have this public comment in front of you also if you want to follow along. The chairman of the Public Property and Safety Committee brought before his committee SB 3876, which is before 102nd General Assembly of Illinois. This bill would provide that the state furnish 66 2/3% of the total salary to be paid to the sheriff at the rate of 80% of the state's attorney's salary. The Illinois Sheriff's Association favors this legislation. This is an additional attack on our self-governing form of county government. Our county is where our government originated and was designed to work by a self-governing people. It was local government. For our history, I quote R.J. Rushdoony's book, The Nature of the American System, which states, quote, first, the property tax remained in the hands of the county, which had early established its jurisdiction. The people of an area thus controlled their tax assessor and their county supervisors so that the taxing power was not beyond their jurisdiction. When the power to tax leaves the county, tyranny will begin in the United States. The people of the county will then be helpless as their property is taxed to the point of expropriation by a distant state capital, unquote. Our county government controlled 95% of all aspects of the government we knew. The judicial arm of our county judges and county attorney, we controlled. The executive arm of our sheriff and deputies, we controlled. The legislative arm of our county board, we controlled. School boards, township boards, village boards, and city councils, we controlled. We controlled our entire county civil government by our votes, thereby controlling the level of taxation and control. This move by the state to pay our sheriff is just another step of state control instead of county or local control. They are not offering us free money. That money they are offering us was first taken from us. Then they offer it back as free. Raise the sheriff's salary by 50% and then control our sheriff by reason of paying his salary. They have done this how many times to our county before? The state took control of paying our county judges. They are now state judges. The state took over paying our county attorney. He is now our state's attorney. The state took over our county engineer. He is now, in essence, our state engineer. The state requirements for our county tax assessor have in fact made her a state tax assessor. Our county real estate proportions are not set by this county any longer, but by the
Okay.
state. Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Clay.
I will finish this at the next time.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Any board members? Okay, on Zoom, anybody on Zoom that wants to make public comment? If you want to make a public comment on Zoom, please raise your hand so we can recognize you. Okay. We see nobody on Zoom. Okay, we'll be going to the appointment, and before I make the appointment for the Stevenson County Circuit Clerk, I want to take this opportunity to thank Stevenson County Board Member Mark Diddens that headed up the search committee along with State Representative Andrew Chesney, Attorney Dave Shockey, Attorney Carla Neiman, and the Stevenson County Sheriff's Office Chief Deputy Steve Stovall. We did review 2 applicants, and the choice of the applicant for this position was Chanel Bardell. So I would like a motion to approve the appointment of Chanel Bardell as our next Stevenson County Circuit Clerk. Can I have a motion? By Mr. Helms and second by Mr. Schroeder. Any discussion before we take the vote? I see none. Madam Clerk, take the roll.
Mr. Helms. Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller. Mr. Clay. Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
Yes.
Ms. Quiggle. Mr. Hilton. Ms. Anthony is not back yet, sorry. Mr. Diddens. Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson. Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Jogerst. Ms. Baker. And Chairman Hadley.
Yes.
Unanimous minus 19.
So it's 19-0. So it passed 19-0. At this time, would you like to come up and introduce yourself to the board, please? I should have probably gave you a heads up on that, but you can just, so they can at least meet who you are and everything, and put a face to the person. Wait, just stop. Real.
Turn the screen.
Okay, you can talk into the mic right there.
I'm Chanel Bardell. I'm from Freeport. I graduated in 1994 here. I've been with the Circuit Clerk's Office. It's going to be 19 years next month. And I'm excited about this new role.
Yeah, yep, congratulations. Thank you. At this time, we will move on. As you know, Ms. Stanowski resigned out of District K, so I need a motion to declare the vacancy in County Board District K. Okay, by Mr. Dale Diddens. Do I have a second? By Mr. Tombson. Any discussion on it? All I can say is that I did reach out to the Democrat Party leadership, and I will be meeting with them shortly to get a candidate in front of the board next month. Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Mr. Diddens. Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson. Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Jogerst. Ms. Baker. Mr. Helms. Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller. Mr. Clay? Mr. Newton? Mr. Bush? Ms. Abear?
yes,
Ms. Quiggle? Mr. Hilton? And Ms. Anthony is not back yet. Chairman Hadley,
Yes,
19-0.
19-0 passes. Where's Miss Anthony at? Because
She is still making
Okay,
copies. She's on her way
well,
back.
we have the vice chair of nursing home, Mr. Hilton, this attorney online.
Yes, sir, I am online.
Okay, we have an action item here and about approving the engagement letter with you, ma'am. So if
I have some information.
okay, go ahead and you handle the information to the board.
As some of you are aware, or will be made more aware later in the meeting, there was a finding of an overpayment to Walnut Acres. We were sent notification of that. That was sent out to you all. Mr. Bolt recommended that we engage with an attorney to see if there is any way to get a reduction or see if there's any means to appeal their finding. Ms. Anthony just informed me that Mr. Bolt did tell her that he has been unable to locate the records that would be necessary in this situation.
So what's the board's pleasure? Do we want to hear from this attorney, ask the attorney questions? It's up to the board what they want to do. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Helms.
Question for the attorney, if I could be allowed to ask that.
Go right ahead, Mr. Helms.
Without having all the documentation available to us that's pertinent to this case, what is the likelihood of the county having any sort of chance of reducing the amount that is owed to the state?
Unfortunately, without the records, basically one of the issues with this audit is it appears from a letter that I received that was dated from November 18th, 2014, that it appears that there were multiple audits that were recouped, but they were never written off the books. And so there's potential for that the Department of Healthcare and Family Services has recouped payments that were related to residents who were in the facility prior to 2008. The problem is, in order to request a reduction based on a potential duplicate recoupment, we would need to show proof that that initial recoupment was made. And without the records, it's a very difficult burden of proof to actually get the reduction. Given the fact there are no, and I've not done this with the Department of Healthcare and Family Services, given that there aren't any records, my recommendation would be to try to negotiate with the Department of Healthcare and Family Services for a hardship reduction. Like I said, I've not done that with DHFS. I've done that with Medicare. That would be the only route I would think that potentially could result in a reduction, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Mr. Clay, go ahead.
Well, who were the people that originally came up with these figures? I mean, was somebody in our facility in these audits?
I believe this audit was the time frame of July 1st of 2012 through June 30th of 2013. And now we have Miss Anthony here. Maybe you can state your question again, and then Mrs. Anthony could answer that.
Sure. Was there somebody at our nursing home that's there now during these audits?
No, not in the business office. The DON, Cheryl, was there during that time frame.
Was she involved in those audits?
What do you mean by involved? Was she aware of them?
And involved in going through the audits with them?
The there was a transition in the business office during the time when we were appealing it. So it started with one business manager and then it got transferred to the next business manager, who then re-audited all the books and, presented that information to the nursing home committee back then.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schroeder, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure that the rest of the board understands what is happening. We're facing a $430,000 fine, for lack of a better term. But understand from conversations I've had with numerous people, this was from the time frame when the nursing home was allegedly making so much profit that it was loaning the county money. We've all heard that story. That was false. That was a fairy tale. We had money that we weren't supposed to have because we were improperly billing. That's the only reason we had excess money at the nursing home. That should change the outlook of some people who maybe have voted in certain manners in regards to the nursing home, believing the story that if we just had the right administrator out there, we could start making all kinds of money out there again. That's not true.
Okay, Mr. Schroeder. Anybody else? We have an attorney online. While you were out, Miss Anthony, she mentioned something about a hardship possibly. Is this, Miss Anthony, our nursing home chairman's in. Could you state that again, ma'am?
Right. So as I said, I have not done this with the Department of Healthcare and Family Services, but it may be worth pursuing because I've done this with CMS with Medicare, is this is a substantial penalty or recoupment that needs to be paid over a 12-month period. There might be a potential to request a hardship reduction, which would require, presenting the department with financial records to show that you do not have the ability to pay the full amount of the recoupment. Like I said, I've not done that with Department of Healthcare and Family Services, but that's the only potential route I can see to reduce the amount of the recoupment.
Okay, Mr. Newton, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. All of the poison dart throwing is unnecessary. We need facts. We don't need accusations and misunderstandings. I understand what you're trying to say, but we need to hear the facts of the situation and not a bunch of rhetoric, which is all I'm getting from across the aisle. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. For the county board's information, from what I understand, this was quite an error in billing some years ago, reflecting the years 2012 and 2013 for a period of approximately 18 months. It was a substantial amount of money. I believe it was almost 3 times this amount that has been reduced into the amount of $430,000 that they are demanding we repay now, either in a one lump sum of $430,000 one-time payment, or a 12-month payment. They want it all paid back in 1 year at a 5% per annum. At this time, looking over our budgetary status, which is bleak to say the least, we do not have that $430,000 to pay it back in one lump sum. If we are stuck paying this back, in my opinion, the 12 months is maybe doable, but even then it's going to put us into the red. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Schroeder, go ahead.
I'm not throwing any poison darts and I'm not using any rhetoric. Everything I said was fact. You can either choose to listen to the facts or you can choose to not listen to the facts. The facts are we are facing a $430,000 fine. I called in and spoke with people in our finance department for the county and asked about the time frame when this occurred. I was told the time frame when this occurred is allegedly when the nursing home was loaning the county money. That's fact. That's not alleged. That's not a poison dart. With all due respect to the gentleman, that's a fact. So the fact is we owe money for money that we collected that we should not have. And we all need to understand that looking forward.
Okay, we're not going to get in a debate back and forth here on this. Mr. Newton, if you got something to add that you haven't added yet, okay. Mr. Clay, go ahead.
Just a clarification on what you said, ma'am. So is it your understanding that there's already been a big reduction in what we would have paid, and this is sort of like the settlement already? That's what I'm asking.
I believe that's not true, but
Okay.
Mr. Hadley, if you wouldn't mind, maybe Ms. Anthony could enlighten us on those exact figures. Thank you.
yes. Go ahead, Miss Anthony.
So the initial information that was given way back was the department had stated that the overpayment was around 2 million. When we re-audited the book, so it wasn't asking for a reduction, when we re-audited and sent in that information, there was the business manager at that time had guessed from re-auditing and looking at what she had done, that the amount would be around $420,000, which is approximate to what we were after over 10 years. What they're saying after looking at what was sent in when we did the re-audit. That makes sense.
Mr. Hadley.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. If I may add one more thing, it's the works we have, I can't remember the name of the electronic program we have, does not cover completely the entire period of this timeframe that they say that we were paid too much money. It's an 18-month timeframe. If I'm not quite correct there, it's close to that. And during that time frame, we did not have all the electronic records. And so what we are understanding is that our administrator has gone and looked for paper records, and he is now telling us that they are not available for about 6 to 7 months of that time frame. And that's why the attorney, if, again, correct me if I'm not right here, she is saying that without that proof, they are not going to guarantee that we can go back and look at those exact records.
That is correct.
Mr. Hilton, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, nursing home did loan money to the county. Regardless to who says what. We, at that particular time, that you'll also find out that the nursing home was renovating itself. When the person took over that was doing that, he was $1.5 million in debt. When he left, he was out of debt. Thank you.
Just to verify, the paperwork is in your packet, and the service date was January 1st of 2012 through June 30th of 2013. Just for your information, it is in the packet. Any more questions to this attorney before we move on? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the engagement letter? Going once, going twice, fails. So there will be, there's no motion to approve the letter of intent. So we will move on. Thank you for being on tonight with us.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. At this time, zoning report. Ms. Henning, please.
Good evening. The monthly zoning board of appeals hearing was held on Thursday, February 10th. There was a full quorum. There were supposed to be 3 hearings that evening. 2 were continued until the next available date in May. We don't have a quorum in March. The next April schedule is full already, so they'll be in May. That was for Mr. Uphold and Mr. Mills. The only hearing of the evening was for Ms. Baxter. She's requesting a special use to allow for a short-term rental located at 11120 West Pinhook Road, Lena, Illinois, and the board voted unanimously to approve the special use.
Mr. Newton, motion to approve?
So moved.
By Mr. Helm, second by Mr. Newton. Any discussion on this? I see none. Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Mr. Helms. Ms. Brashaw.
Aye.
Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller. Mr. Clay. Mr. Newton.
Aye.
Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
yes,
Ms. Quiggle. Mr. Hilton. Ms. Anthony. Mr. Diddens. Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson. Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Jogurst. Ms. Baker. Chairman Hadley.
Yes.
Passes 20-1.
Who voted?
Or I'm sorry, 19. No, 20-0. Sorry, that was,
Okay, 20-0, it
Sorry.
passes. Any information? Okay, thank you very much, then. Oh, go ahead, okay.
Several months ago, there were questions by several board members concerning a sign out at Dakota. Could you give us an update of what's going on with that issue?
I am still waiting to hear back from the state's attorney as to what sign it technically is. Our code is pretty bland on that. It's technically a sign, but he's still deciding if it's a freedom of speech or if it's a sign that needs a permit. If it does need a permit, it won't have a fee though. So
Okay.
it's still in limbo.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time. At this time, we will move on to unfinished business, and we have none. Chairman's report, very brief. A few months ago, I talked about local government day that they're going to have out at the Stevenson County Fair on July 26th, 2022. They wanted to know if the county board was interested in setting up a booth. It'll be $10. And I have not heard back from any board members because I think it would be a great idea that people would come out and meet their local county board members. I'm not going to sit there all day, but I kind of like to have some other board members come on out too, because the taxpayers would love to probably come up and visit with the county board members and everything. So I'm just putting it on your radar. Get back to me in case you want to sit out there in a booth and for local government day. And I believe that's on a Tuesday. So just get a hold of me and tell me that you're interested, because they said that we'll have to man it during the time that the building is open. So I would assume that's maybe 10 to 10 or something like that. I'll get that verified. One other thing, as you know, the legislation conference was canceled for February 22nd, 23rd. I asked if it was going to be rescheduled, and it sounds like that it will not be rescheduled. So they are going to be holding a membership meeting by Zoom Monday, February 28th, beginning at 1 p.m. and that you have to sign up. And if you don't have the information for signing up for that, me and the county administrator be more than glad to get that sent out to you and everything. So that's all I have. Anybody have any questions? Okay, I see none. We will move on to appointments. Madam Clerk, read appointments, please.
Approval of the appointment of Danielle Jackson to fill a vacancy on the 708 board. Approval of the reappointment of Ray Busker to the ETSB 911 board. And approval of the reappointment of Denise Book to the ETSB 911 board.
Can I get a motion to approve all three by Mr. Newton? Second by Mr. Schroeder. Any discussion? Mr. Clay, go ahead.
What's the 708 board do?
We have a representative here. Go ahead, Miss Anthony, sits on the 708 board.
The 708 board receives funding by state statute, and it is a mental health board. So different agencies are come to the 708 board and request funds such as FHN Family Counseling, Tyler's Justice Center, Rosecrans, just these different agencies come and the 708 board determines how the funds get allocated.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? I see none. Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
Yes.
Ms. Quiggle. Mr. Hilton. Ms. Anthony. Mr. Diddens. Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson. Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Jogers. Ms. Baker. Mr. Helms. Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller. Mr. Clay. Chairman Hadley.
Yes.
Passes 19 to 1.
19-1 passes. At this time, action items and information from the standing committees. Mr. Helms, Finance.
Thank you. First up, we have approval of agreements with Employee Benefits Corporation, Cobra Secure, and the Best Flex Plan. This came up based on the recommendation of Carrie McWright from Diamond Brothers, along with our administrator, that this will help us to get into and maintain compliance with the Department of Labor. It's very important that we have this, considering the large volume of new laws that have gone into effect to, again, make sure that we're getting into and staying compliant. So with that, I will make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second by Mr. You're seconding? Yeah, Mr. Jurgis. Any discussion on this? I see none. Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Mr. Helms.
Aye.
Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller. Mr. Clay. Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
Yes.
Ms. Quiggle. Mr. Hilton. Ms. Anthony. Mr. Diddens. Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson. Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Jogers. Ms. Baker. Chairman Hadley.
Yes.
20 to 0.
20-0 passes. Any information, Mr. Helms, out of your committee?
Yes, we're currently deliberating the county board chairman, vice chair, and county board member stipends. We'll be bringing more information in the next few months. In about 60 days or so, we'll be beginning to work on the budget policy for 2023. We are also currently discussing budgeted and unbudgeted expenditures, along with potential uses of ARPA funds that have not been allocated. We've also begun to discuss the nursing home financial situation, considering the dire state that it's currently in. We're monitoring that and we'll advise the full board later. We've also been working very closely with Carrie McWright of Diamond Brothers regarding the medical insurance renewal that will be coming forward early this summer. So that's all I have for now.
Okay, Mr. Flegel, did you have something?
Yeah, no, something just bothered me right now. Miss Quiggle came in at the beginning of the meeting, right?
Correct.
Okay. As a board member, could we have somebody call and check her at home? Because it's not likely that it's not usual for her to check in and then not be a part of the meeting. I would feel better if we could have somebody try to make contact with her to make sure she's okay. I don't have her number or anything, but just a concern.
You're gonna handle
I was gonna
it?
say I can.
Yeah, he's gonna handle it. We're gonna continue to move on. Thank you, Mr. Flegel, for that. At this time, we will move to public property and safety. Mr. Schroeder, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First action item we have is an approval of bid for facility improvements for the courthouse, jail, and public safety building. I'm going to give some background information on this. So funds for this project were budgeted and approved in fiscal year 22. You can find those on page 134 of the final budget document. Should be noted that when that budgeted amount was approved, it was on the stipulation or contingency that an RFP for the project was required. An RFP was done 2 vendors submitted sealed bids that were opened on 12/9 of 21. The low bid of $1,510,331 was submitted by the Helm Group. Both bids were reviewed by the Public Property and Safety Committee. There was discussion on the process and the bids. The committee voted by 6-1 to approve the Helm Group bid. At the time of that vote, I realized that in the fiscal year 2022 budget, there was not enough funding in that line item to cover this year's expenses. To explain that a little bit further, when the budget was prepared, the anticipated cost of that project was $1,991,409. And what was going to happen was it was going to be a 5-year lease on that amount. So and that was at 1.79%, which is the finance deal that the county board passed with US Bank. So when that was put into the budget, that total amount was basically a lease payment. So the line item that's in the budget right now was a 1-year lease payment of that total amount of $1,991,409. So that's why in that line item 043-943-36810, the line is $417,261. After that, we found out from the state's attorney, this is after the budget was already passed, that we could not finance or should not finance the labor portion of that project or the planned maintenance part of that project. So what that basically did is we got a bid that was lower than what we had budgeted, but we also found out that we have to pay the labor portion this year. The labor portion will be paid completely in fiscal year 2022. And then we had an option where we could either pay all of the planned maintenance up front, or we could spread that out over the course of 5 years. The committee explored both options. It was the will of the committee to move forward with the payments for the planned maintenance portion spread out over 5 years. So that's what was passed by the committee. Give you those final numbers here. So the breakdown on the Helm Group bid, just so everybody understands, is the material components were $735,860. The labor components are $499,821. And the planned maintenance component of $274,650. At the committee level, when this was passed, we passed it contingent upon reopening of the budget to adjust that line item to have the proper amount of funding in there. Since then, at finance, the finance director advised that we could move forward on this project without reopening the budget immediately, because there is funding in that line item that could be spent down, and then the budget could be reopened later. The finance director advised that there's going to be a need to reopen the budget to address some other issues within the county. And if we're going to reopen the budget, it would be better to just do it one time. So the finance director's advice is to wait on reopening the budget at least a couple of months. And the finance director feels that, again, we have enough funding in the line item to move forward on this project as it is right now. Immediate expenses on the project, we're going to have to put 20% down on the equipment, which will come out to somewhere around 120,000. We're going to have some labor expense, and then the planned maintenance could be later on, but we should be okay for a few months. So that was the advice of the finance director. So based on all of that, I would make a motion to accept the Helm Group bid and go with the 1 year, basically paying the planned maintenance on a yearly basis.
And second by Mr. Jurgis. I guess I got one question. All these numbers that you gave us will all come out of ARP money, correct?
Correct. It's all out of ARPA funding.
Okay, then. Okay. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Mr. Schroeder, and a second by Mr. Jurgis. Discussion. Any amendments or anything? Okay, Mr. Helms, go ahead.
Well, I've got some questions about the RFP itself, and I don't know if Mr. Schroeder can address those. I'm understanding the sheriff wrote the RFP, so I don't know who it's appropriate to ask about, but I've got 5 or 6 questions on it, if I could get some.
Well, if the
Clarification.
sheriff is here, Sheriff, would you like to come up, please?
Thank you.
Sure.
I guess what I'll. Do you have the RFP?
I do.
Okay, my first question is on the bottom of page 4. I believe it's page 4. Better make sure here. The way it printed may not coincide with the actual pages, but I'm looking at item H, include labor and materials for a 5-year maintenance program. One of the items down below, there are, it looks like 6. It states all trained condensing units and then all AHUs. Can you tell me what the AHUs are?
The AHU would be the air conditioning units.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then the next page on scope conditions at the bottom. Be page 5, and it says submit with RFP documentation of ICC certification and validation of trade ally status to ensure the potential energy savings can be submitted for and harvested for the Stevenson County and Stevenson County Sheriff. Were you reviewing the validation of that, or who was doing that to ensure that the numbers that were presented were accurate?
Actually, I went to the internet to
Okay,
get those numbers.
okay. So
I
you just,
researched city, county, and park districts and got a lot of the information that I used for this RFP.
okay,
There were other numbers that we submitted that were taken from previous walkthroughs.
Hmm.
So I had some of those numbers.
okay. So what Helm Group provided then met what you were looking for with this?
It was previous walkthroughs that we had submitted those numbers, and the other numbers I received through research.
Okay, but what was provided met your specifications?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then the next page, vendor qualifications, item number 2. The vendor shall demonstrate a minimum of 15 years of experience. I'm just curious why 15 years?
15 years I thought was a good number. We've had several situations within the facilities, and we had all of those addressed by Helm Group, and other providers, and Helm Group has always provided the right service.
Okay, all right. And then item number 4 in that same section, the contractor must possess a safety experience modification rate, EMR, less than 0.75 at the time of the bid. I looked on the internet, and I couldn't find anything. Can you tell me what this is and why it's important?
Maybe somebody from the Helm Group could address that.
Well, I guess I'm not necessarily looking for the bidder to explain it. I
What
mean,
page
I'm
is that
wondering.
on, Scott?
It's the same page, number 6, under vendor qualifications, item number 4. The contractor must possess a safety experience modification rate, EMR less than 0.75 at the time of the bid. So I'm not debating whether or not they meet it. I'm trying to figure out why it's important. What that number represents, and then why in your process of crafting this that you felt that was necessary.
Well, that was something that I picked up off the websites, the internet.
Okay, but can you explain why it's important to have within the bid itself?
That I can.
And then the last page, item 11 and 12, it says provide with the RFP a copy of company's corporate safety plan. And 12, provide with the RFP a copy of company's EPA refrigerant management plan. Is there someone other than yourself that was reviewing those to make sure they're what you're looking for, or was that something that you did yourself?
No, I reviewed those myself.
And the bid that was provided
Yes.
met that? Okay,
Yes,
that's all I
they
have.
provided everything that we needed for this bid.
Perfect,
And
thank
I
you.
know that, I did write this bid, just so the board knows that. I did the RFP. I did research on it. There are some things that maybe I couldn't explain further, but I actually did the RFP.
Okay, perfect.
And I'm letting the board know that.
Thank
I
you.
wrote this RFP.
Okay, any more questions for the sheriff before he steps down? Did you have something, Mr. Clay or Mr. Miller? Okay, Jerry, go ahead.
My question on this was, under the box there, it says potential scope revisions and change order. Is this a change order that's going to affect the 1.515 million? That's the question.
I'm not, where
Well,
you,
this sounds like it's a change order. Is that changing the bid of 1,510,000?
no,
No.
no,
It's not.
no, you're talking about the breakdown of the labor, the planned maintenance and the.
Yeah.
No, that's just a breakdown of that 1.5.
Okay.
We had to break it down because the state's attorney advised us against financing the labor and the planned maintenance. So that's why that box breaks down those amounts.
Yeah, but I'm below that box where it says potential scope revisions and change order incurred. I mean, change order generally is you've taken a bid and now somebody's come in and changing something and now the price changes.
I got it right here.
I see, I see potential scope revise or change order incurred with labor rate and material.
Yeah,
markup.
that does not change the total project value. The numbers that we're going off of are the total project value and the accounting purposes breakdown of the three components.
So the figures on
The-
here
the-
are solid.
The figures on here are solid. The total cost as the bid is 1,510,331. That's the total cost.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Miller, did you have anything that we could? Yeah,
Got, or part of this bid was a planned maintenance component. We have maintenance people on staff in the buildings now, right? Are they not capable of keeping up with this equipment?
Well, the board has been discussing the upkeep of these facilities for 5 years. And unfortunately, you need a planned maintenance project to complete that with all three facilities that I control. We do have maintenance staff here and the public safety building, courthouse, and the jail. They're very good. But with the equipment that we're going to have installed, the train equipment, the Kohler, it will work in conjunction with our Honeywell system that we already have. And having a planned maintenance system where the systems are checked quarterly or biannually would be beneficial for the county.
I guess my concern is when I break that number down, I come up with like $54,930 a year. And we're paying our maintenance staff that's there all the time, $48,000 and $55,000. So we're effectively hiring another maintenance man here. And I'm just confused as to, these systems that we're replacing are obviously antiquated and require, I'm assuming, quite a bit of labor and looking after. It would seem to me that the new systems would require less maintenance, not more. And so that's my concern is why we're subbing this out when we've got pretty qualified maintenance people on staff already.
With the new system, there's going to be a lot of updated electronics, other.
Sheriff, maybe
areas that-
we should have Patty come up because she gave a pretty good presentation on that to the committee, the planned
Okay.
maintenance part.
Sounds good.
Patty, could you come up and talk to us?
I'll keep an open mind.
Yeah, keep in mind though, that the maintenance people also work on our plumbing, our electric, the exterior of the building, the interior of the building. The maintenance staff I have now, we're actually spending less than we did before.
The maintenance staff we have now, though, did they maintain the systems that we're replacing?
No, we have
Okay.
Helm Group replace whatever needs fixing.
okay,
Mr. Chairman, could I have Patty
Yeah.
address the planned maintenance?
Okay,
I think it would be good for the board to hear.
Yeah, but can we let the sheriff go now? I see. Okay, Dave, you can step down unless we need you again here. Oh, go ahead. Let's get. It's a 5-year maintenance plan, correct?
That was-
She'll explain everything.
That was
Okay.
part of the RFP.
Well, you can ask. Okay, go ahead, please.
So Mechanicals Helm Group has been a partner assisting with the maintenance with all 3 locations for the county, specifically at the county jail, the condensing units. You've got multiple compressors that are bad. The equipment needs, there's multiple pieces of equipment that need to be replaced, but specific to the planned maintenance, you guys do have a maintenance staff, and our role has never been to duplicate any of those efforts, but more of an extension from a factory level. There's a lot of, the EPA refrigerant management aspects that your folks don't take care of, that from a factory level, those are the types of things that we would come in and maintain. Condensing units on boilers, same thing, those air codes, those high efficiencies, so have special kits in them. You guys are not maintaining those. It's like buying a brand new car and not changing the oil. And you guys have, even in this building, a beautiful boiler downstairs that Johnson Controls put in for you guys, brand new air handling unit, and there's no maintenance being done on that. You've got a high tonnage chiller out there that maintenance is not being done on. And you guys spent significant funds on that within the last 5 years on that chiller, maybe. We didn't do the install, but you can't buy a vehicle and not change oil. You can't buy equipment and not maintain it.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Newton.
I would say from your perspective, if you wanted routine maintenance, that's something that you guys would do. But the factory level stuff, this isn't uncommon in any business that has higher end equipment. They do have people that come in, whether you're hiring, Honeywell, Johnson, you're going to hire somebody to maintain that higher tonnage equipment and boilers. So that's something you should budget for. And most places do budget to have outside maintenance be an extension from a factory level. Yeah. And the county, right, which is why you guys have been in a position where some of that equipment is older and living on borrowed time, and it's not been maintained to the level that it should have been.
Okay, Mr. Schroeder, go ahead.
No, I don't have anything further.
Okay,
I just
Mr.
wanted.
Helms, go ahead.
Well, when I got here tonight, there was this document on our desks, which Mr. Miller just referenced. I guess I'm wondering where this came from and what was the.
But it was requested, and we furnished it. It has the 3 maintenance guys on there, what they make without benefits. And I gotta agree with the sheriff. We got some top maintenance people in this county. Very lucky that the sheriff's put in some good maintenance people at the county jail. And because I've been over here at the courthouse and met with the maintenance guy, and he showed me everything about the new equipment and what was put in. And I appreciate that, Dave, that he showed me all the new equipment and how it works and everything. So I appreciate that too. So yes, Mr. Newton, any more questions?
Only that this maintenance program is being paid out of the American Rescue Fund. So what are you going to do going forward if you're doing it a one-time shot? Is the sheriff going to now put that in his budget so to reduce something, or because just putting it out of this one-time shot is not going to make it take care of after this year is up. So you're not really giving us an answer to going forward if you're adding this in without training somebody to do this work. That's all. I just want to know, what are we doing going after this?
It'll be up to the future boards, but Mr. Clay, go ahead.
My only comment is this: if I bought $1.25 million worth of equipment and they were asking me to pay $250,000 for the next 5 years, it'd be like, what's wrong with your equipment? When you're putting in brand new equipment, that ought to run with no maintenance for 5 years. And I'm not talking about oil changes on an engine. I'm talking about the equipment working. And so I'm opposed to paying this kind of money for somebody to look at new equipment.
So does anybody, okay, Mr. Fliegel, go ahead.
Yes, Pat, I got a couple of questions on the maintenance side and I know some machines require more maintenance at the beginning of the life. And some of them may end up more maintenance later on in life. Is that something that has to be done every year? Or is it some pieces every 2 years or, I mean, I know when you use the term, factory?
Factory level maintenance, right? So if you're going to look at a condensing unit, the factory says there's quarterly things that need to be completed. And that's how the baseline for that. If you're looking at an Airco boiler, there's things that you need to do. And then they do have their repair kit that gets changed annually. It's different to each piece of equipment. Your boilers are going to have combustion analysis that's going to be completed. There's planned maintenance on there that allows everything to be running as efficiently as what it can be as well. So you've got the combustion analysis on the boilers, you've got the chiller, you're going to make sure that everything condenser's cleaned. Having something run efficiently allows it to run longer. ASHRAE has a life cycle. If places do maintenance, they're going to extend that life cycle. So instead of spending $500,000 on another boiler like you guys just did in this building in 15 years, your goal is to spend it in 30 years. But it's going to take maintenance on that boiler to make sure that everything is running correctly.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that boiler was the original boiler for the courthouse. So,
Right.
so how many years? 40 years we had that boiler?
Mhm.
Courthouse 73, 74. So that's how long the boiler lasts. But we had a good maintenance crew always, Snavely was on the ball all the time. So I got to commend, we've always picked good maintenance people to keep our equipment running. So,
And we worked hand in hand with Nelson too. He was absolutely fabulous, but he knew where he could take it. And then it was a phone call. Hey, can you guys send Troy or Tony or whoever it was over here to assist him? There's certain factory level things that the guys just don't self-perform.
Okay, Rich brings up another question for me. Some of our systems are a little older here you mentioned about, okay? And everything combines together, works together. If they're efficient, if they need maintenance, is that going to affect the new system we put in?
Say that again.
Well, I'm just thinking, I don't know. I'm totally Greek here, okay? Your maintenance and on our facility, the equipment we just put in, and if we have older equipment that hasn't been maintained, but they all have to work together, okay? Will that cause a problem since this other equipment that has not been maintained?
No, and the planned maintenance covers not only the new equipment, Mr. Clay, but everything within the facility.
Quite great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So it includes the building automation. So the building automation component in the courthouse, there is no automation in your courtrooms. So that's all part of this program, is putting the controls in place and then putting the maintenance in place for the next 5 years.
For the whole.
For all of it, everything HVAC.
Okay. All right, thank you, Betty.
Yep,
okay,
you're welcome.
Mr. Schroeder, go ahead.
Just a couple points on this. So just, keep in mind that this project was passed and put in the budget at almost $2 million. Now we've got a bid that drops it down to, 1.5. But the planned maintenance aspect of it, there was a question about paying for it. It's going to be paid for 5 years out of the ARPA funds. Yes, that's correct. That after that, we're going to have to find a mechanism to fund it if it's still around $54,000 a year. But the first 5 years is all paid for out of ARPA funds. So this is a good opportunity. Since I've been on this board, we talk a lot about strategic planning. Strategic planning. That's a big word we talk about all the time. This is strategic planning. This is addressing critical HVAC needs in critical buildings related to public safety, and having a planned maintenance component to that to make sure that this equipment that we're investing in is properly maintained, along with all the other equipment that we already have. As Patty just said, this is all of our equipment to keep our buildings, running like they should be. So this is a good opportunity for us to use these ARPA funds to actually make a difference in buildings we own.
Mr. Dale Diddens, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question. Is this $275,000, is that
Just labor?
That's labor and that's any refrigerant, any repair kits, anything planned maintenance related is in that dollar value.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Yep, you're welcome.
Mr. Miller, go ahead.
She's answered all my questions. I'm
Okay,
good.
then. Okay, thank you very much, then.
You're welcome.
Okay, any amendments, discussion, everything's over? Okay, Madam Clerk, call roll then.
Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Jokers. Ms. Baker. Mr. Helms.
No.
Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
No.
Mr. Clay.
No.
Mr. Newton.
No.
Mr. Bush.
No.
Ms. Abear.
no,
Ms. Quiggle.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Aye.
Mr. Hilton.
No.
Ms. Anthony.
no,
Mr. Diddens.
No.
Mr. Copeland.
Aye.
Mr. Tombson.
Aye.
Chairman Hadley.
No.
Ties 10-10.
So that fails. Okay, well. Your committee will just have to take it up. It's failed, so go move ahead on to the next action item, please.
For information, this service agreement.
Oh, I'm
can't
sorry.
hear.
Okay. I got it done now.
Thank you. This is approval of a service agreement with Black Hawk Hills Regional Council. This service agreement involves a intergovernmental agreement that the county entered into with IEMA in December of 2020 for a multi-hazard mitigation plan. So this is basically a grant through IEMA that gives the county access to funds to work with Black Hawk Hills Regional Council to draft our multi-hazard mitigation plan, which is required planning that EMA has to do as part of their certification. You've probably heard updates from Kevin Countryman. His office has been working hard on this already. This is budget neutral. It's no effect on the county budget whatsoever. The county match portion of this grant is all just labor expense within the EMA department. So there's no cost to the county at all. So this was passed by the committee 6-1, and I'll make a motion to approve the service agreement.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Tombson. Any discussion on this? I see none. Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Mr. Schroeder.
Aye.
Mr. Flegel.
He's out.
Mr. Wire.
Yes.
Mr. Jokers.
Aye.
Ms. Baker. Mr. Helms.
Aye.
Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Clay.
No.
Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
yes,
Ms. Quiggle.
Aye.
Mr. Hilton. Ms. Anthony.
Aye.
Mr. Diddens.
Aye.
Mr. Copeland.
Aye.
Mr. Tombson.
Aye.
Mr. Flegel.
Aye.
Chairman Hadley.
Yes.
19-1.
Okay, passes. Go ahead, Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you. I have no other action items, just a couple of pieces of information. I had sent out to all board members a document that I had gotten at a recent seminar I was at in relation to the Safety Act that was passed by the Illinois legislature. That document had information in it about the 2 trailer bills that have been passed so far to make changes to that act. There are more trailer bills coming to try to fix some of the things that were in the original act. The reason I sent that out to everybody is there's a lot of things within that bill that the county board needs to be aware of going forward for planning purposes. There are items within that, if you read through it, that are going to affect revenue. There's items in there that are going to affect expenses. There's unfunded mandates in there that are going to apply to the sheriff's office. So that's why I sent that out, so everybody's aware of those things as we move forward. When you're talking about revenue, cash bail is going to be eliminated started next year. The way that affects revenue, just so you understand, right now, if somebody gets arrested and they post a cash bail, they have some skin in the game. As the case moves through the system, that cash bail can be applied toward fines and fees. If you have no cash bail posted, when it comes time to pay fines and fees, there's nothing to apply to it. So you're going to start seeing a lot more uncollected fines and fees. That is going to have a negative effect on revenue. Just understand that. The big expense that you're going to see in that, there's several different unfunded mandates within that Safety Act, but the big one is going to be the body worn cameras for the sheriff's office. The devices themselves are not that expensive, but the cloud storage, the redaction software, that is expensive, and that's going to be a big price tag when that comes forward. So just be ready for it. So another thing we talked about at committee was, as Mr. Clay spoke about during his public comments, I just brought it to the committee's attention that Senate Bill 3876 is out there right now in the legislature. That was introduced by a Democrat senator. There's now 4 co-sponsors, 3 more Democrat senators and 1 Republican senator. So it's still out there, but that would, as Mr. Clay alluded to, the sheriff's office or the sheriff's salary would be paid in part by the state, but it would have to be at 80% of what the state's attorney makes. The state would pick up like 66 2/3 and the county would pick up the remainder of that. So that bill is still out there. Other than that, we didn't have a lot of discussion at committee about something we'd been talking about a lot, and that's the violence that's going on in our community. But unfortunately, between my committee meeting or our committee meeting and today, as many of you have heard, we've had another homicide in Stevenson County, another shooting death, another 24-year-old life taken away. The gang violence that's plaguing some of our communities continues to go on. And I sincerely hope that we continue as a county board to look for any way we can to impact what's going on. It has to stop. It's leaving a stain on our entire community. To constantly be in the news because there's shots being fired and people being killed is not helping economic development. And it's not wanting people to stay here in this community or move to this community. So this is a problem that's going to have to continue to get attention. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to administration. Go ahead. I see no action items. Any information?
Just wanted to comment, Mr. Chairman. We had 2 items from January that we tabled, and that was, one was the potential lawsuit from the vaccine mandate, and then the other one was the mandated vaccine for the county employees, and both those got tabled. There was a lot of concern about those. Other than that, I have no information. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we did receive an email from Mr. Mark Diddens. He just wanted to state there was no action items and no information out of his committee. And so we will move on to the nursing center. Go ahead, Miss Anthony.
First up on the agenda was the approval of nursing home management company. As a committee, we decided to lay that over due to some of the recent financial issues that have arisen within the nursing home. We felt it was best to bring it here for discussion for the whole board to discuss kind of the vision and what we're looking for with the nursing home in pursuing something like a nursing home management company. We did interview 4 candidates. We kind of narrowed it down. One withdrew their name, and then we discussed 2 of them last evening and had some discussion about that, and then decided that it would be best to have this discussion here as the full board before moving forward. So I will open it up for discussion and anyone's thoughts about a nursing home management company.
Mr. Helms, go ahead.
I wholeheartedly agree for the success of that business. We do need an outside management company, but as we talked about last night, in my opinion, we need a full-time administrator in place prior to having that management company in place, which is why we talked about it last night, said it was probably better to lay it over. I wanted it to come to the full board so everyone would have an opportunity to discuss this. First and foremost, we really don't have the funds available to us at this time to fund that process. Our unbeknownst to all of us, but our own fault, we didn't realize that we are not actively seeking a full-time administrator. We have an interim administrator in place, and I will take the blame along with, I'm sure, everyone else in our committee that we dropped the ball on that and wrongly assumed that we were still pursuing a full-time administrator. So that's, in my opinion, the bigger fish to fry at this point. If we're going to move forward as a county with a home, we have to have an administrator in place. So again, I appreciate you bringing this forward and allowing the full board to discuss this, but we really need to have a come to Jesus talk here with this nursing home and figure out what direction we want to go.
Go ahead, Mr. Schroeder.
I'll be honest, I don't know what it is we're talking about right now with the nursing home. We got an email today, everybody got from our finance director, telling us how dire the situation is with the finances out there. Our most pressing need at the nursing home right now, I don't disagree that we may need a management company going forward, but our most pressing need is we have a severe revenue problem. And we can't really do anything unless we start getting some revenue in there and getting it in there quickly. This isn't something we need to take up right now. We have to get our billing and our revenue taken care of. Excalibur is not done the job. They just haven't. They overpromised and under-delivered. But if we don't fix the revenue, everything else out there is moot because we're going to run out of money.
Okay, Mr. Clay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I put a paper on everybody's desk. I went to the budget books and pulled these figures out of the 2022 budget for 2018 through 2022, and before that, out of the 2018 book. And so here's how I do my economic calculations. In 2016, if you take the real estate tax, which the taxpayers threw into the fund, minus the profit for the year, we lost 30,000. In 2017, the two together, we lost $430,000. In 2018, we lost $1,015,000. In 2019, we lost $1,350,000. In 2020, we lost another $500,000. In 2021, we lost $2,892,000. And we're projecting a $500,000 loss this year, which that's just somebody's guess. Businessmen do not run their business like this. I'll guarantee you, because every businessman would be broke. This shows that bureaucrats are running this. And the reason bureaucrats are running this is because they have no skin in the game. They're taking taxpayers' money, people who have worked hard for their money, and they're just throwing it down a hole. This cannot be fixed. I've been on this board off and on for 35 years, and this has been a constant problem the whole time. And this isn't the first 5-6 years in a row that there's been losses sitting there just year after year after year. There's nobody responsible for this. And therefore, we're just actually just, I mean, this is terrible, what we're doing to the taxpayers out there. And so, and we're talking about this management firm. We're just gonna dump some more money down the hole. That's where it's gone. No one can fix this problem because no one person owns this outfit. And therefore it cannot be fixed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Miss Anthony, go ahead.
Just to provide a little bit of background on, management companies and looking at what they provide to support nursing homes is a lot of education, a lot of upgrades and software and different things of that nature. One of the things that we found out at Walnut Acres is we weren't utilizing the full scope of some of the systems we have in place. So for example, our billing system being Matrix. It's a good system, but we weren't utilizing it to the capacity that it could. Even our time clocks, we weren't using that to the capacity that it could. And so companies like this come in and support the staff existing out at the home to provide the education. So they're using those systems adequately, or saying that your system's, not the most efficient. And so, here's a suggestion on something else. Along with helping marketing plans, looking at your staffing, making any recommendations based on that. Compliance is a huge thing. We've seen firsthand what happens when we're not in compliance. And so that's one of the main things that they're also looking at, making sure that everything's in compliance. So, when we're just looking at, as Scott alluded to, to be successful, having a management company provide that and provide the education so the existing staff can then learn what they have to and then move forward. That's the benefit of a management company. Finances, of course, is what we're looking at. Are we able to afford something like that? I do want to provide just a little bit of information, and I know that this certainly hasn't passed yet, but there's been significant talks in Illinois about reform when it comes to nursing home payments specific to Medicaid. That's legislation that's being discussed right now, and it's hoping to pass. And if it does, it's targeting specific home, or it's one of the largest benefiting nursing centers will be those with the largest Medicaid percentage patients, which would be ours. And so you're looking at a higher reimbursement potentially from Medicaid. And we're already seeing a little bit of that when they change to managed care. Traditional Medicaid gets reimbursements far less than the managed care that's out there right now. And so, when we're looking towards the future, there are some potential higher reimbursements coming. I know that this is all proposed, but it's still something to consider. Speaking a little bit to what Mr. Clay said, when he's mentioning taxpayers, taxpayers have decided, in the past that they wanted to keep the nursing home. So when the tax levy came about, we've seen taxpayers come and show their support to the nursing home in many of these meetings. So I do think that it's a benefit. I mean, we are at a point right now where there's a benefit to go back to the taxpayers. Do they want to keep the nursing home? Are they willing to fund it more? So I do think that we need to seriously consider looking at a referendum on an upcoming ballot to ask the question to the taxpayers, because they've supported it in the past. And if that's something that they're wanting to keep, then we should do what we can to do that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Georges, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Mr. Clay's numbers here. Obviously, the 500,000 has been approved by the taxpayers on that top level there. But as you can see, for the last 4 years, basically, we've run a deficit. I do not believe the way the current situation is, we're going to have a positive cash flow here with all these new issues that keep popping up. The nursing home does seem to be like it's the elephant in the room every time we have a conversation about finances or projects or anything like that to try to benefit the residents of this county. And I was going to mention what Miss Anthony did, that we really do need to go back to the taxpayers because I don't think they realize the amount of money that we're spending out there. And we really need to get their approval. So I would fully support the referendum. Thank you.
Mr. Schroeder, go ahead.
I don't think we have time to get to a referendum. Our finance director sent us an email today about how dire the situation is. We don't have that much time. Are we going to start going into debt? Are we going to lay off employees on other areas of the county to keep that thing afloat? What's the answers right now? We're running out of money. Somebody have an answer how we're going to continue to pay the bills?
Miss Anthony, go ahead.
So when we're looking at finances from an accrual basis, and again, I understand that we can't guarantee when we're going to get payment. But from an accrual basis, when the numbers are run for what we're billing out and what claims are, it's, we're about breaking even. So taking that into consideration, going on to what Mr. Schroeder said, it's getting those reimbursements in. That's what we have to focus on, because there's still a significant amount of cash that from going back from December 20 that we're looking to still collect on, somewhere around a little over $1 million, if I'm correct. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Helms. Right. So if we're able to get those, if the company that we're currently with, or we're considering, there's Mr. Bolt's currently drafting a letter of concern to the CEO. He's already verbally spoken to him. But to address the concerns that they haven't delivered what we thought they would in the time that they would. So getting those reimbursements could drastically change the immediate shortfall. I'm only addressing the immediate shortfall here. Thank you.
Mr. Clay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The concept of what the poor farm in Stevenson County started out to do was for a place for people who had nowhere else to go and needed help. And part of the things they did was, and I'll read part of it, every able-bodied person had a job to do either in the barn, in the garden, or in the house. They produced their own food. They took care of the property, everything. This concept today is not the same concept. When we had all kinds of public comment here, these are people that have relatives in this county, and they're off in some other state calling in here saying, you need to keep that nursing home open. They're out there enjoying their lives. And you know what? They want us to take care of their family members. Why don't they come back here and take care of their family members? Why do the taxpayers in this county have to pay for their family, the relatives? The biblical concept is that families take care of their own family members. If your grandparents or great grandparents need to be taken care of, that's the family's business. That's not the civil government's business. That's not this county's business. That's not the taxpayers in this county's business. We're talking about the concept of charity. Charity is something that you voluntarily give to somebody else. It's a voluntary thing. What we're dealing with here, this is not voluntary. We're taking a gun out to them people out here in this county, and we're saying, you turn your money over to us because we know how to spend it better than you do, or we'll take your property away from you. That's not charity. I don't know why we think we feel so great about this. This is not ethical. These people that have family members in that home, they ought to be paying the bill, not me or any of the taxpayers in this county. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Flegel, go ahead.
Yes, so as happened in our public property committee, remember we talked about the need for mental health facilities in this part of the state. I thought the idea was thrown out there, it was discussed. Is there the possibility of turning, because I know census are down in all of these facilities. This whole, not just our county, because of COVID, some family members are not putting their parents, their elderly in a nursing home with the fear that they couldn't see them. So there, a lot of people are doing everything they can to keep them out right now. But the question I have is, have we investigated the potential of turning one wing or something like that into a mental health facility to alleviate that, or to alleviate or help in that situation for people in this area? It's a sort, if it would be, it would be a source of income for us. We have the facility. And I don't know the legal ramifications, that I don't know. It's just a thought. It's an idea. Can we go down that route, or just to throw it out there to see if there's anything worth investigating, worth looking at?
I got the answer for that. Recently, I know the chairman of the nursing home committee and Mr. Helms and Miss Newcomer met with a private owner to discuss the possibility of drug and alcohol treatment. Personally, Tom Cunningham, myself, and Ms. Newcomer have met with a company out of Rockford that is going to have a presence in Stevenson County to talk to them about drug and alcohol treatment and leasing the nursing home. They have showed interest, but too early, because they want to get their foot into the door with outpatient treatment first. They asked me to reach out to the 708 board chairman to talk to him, reach out to Joe Davis County 708 board and the Carroll County 708 board to get some numbers put together. They want numbers put together because they're a nonprofit organization. Yes, this stuff is being looked into, and it is seriously being looked into, because it would be huge for the county, and the county wouldn't be taking this over. This would be a private company coming in, because we have a huge drug and alcohol problem in this county, and other counties have it. We have a mental health problem too. If we could find an alternative, that'd be a great idea. And yes, it's being worked on.
Okay, that's all I asked. Thank you.
And add something else too. I was at a meeting with the mayor from Rockford yesterday and the chairman from Winnebago. And I just told him that we're having some issues over here with our nursing home. And I said, I understand you're having some issues over there. Yes, they are putting a ballot referendum question on, and to go back to the taxpayers to ask if about the levy and everything that they have over there. So I did pass it on to some board members and the chair that they are going through a struggle over there, and that they plan on doing. I don't know, on these referendums, they're kind of tricky. I think they're supposed to be done in the general election. I'm not too sure, but that's a question we probably want to talk to the county clerk, if that can be put on the primary one, or it has to be put on the general election. Go ahead, Mr. Jurgis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate what the nursing home committee is trying to do. It just seems like they're kind of a losing battle here a little bit, but I would totally support if they met next week and get rid of Excalibur and get somebody in there that knows what they're doing to start collecting this money. I think that's the big issue right now. We need to do that, but I do think that we could use that nursing home for drug and alcohol abuse and things like that. I think we'd have to really be careful that we isolate the two if we do half of it. So we, keep it quiet for the residents out there, for the older residents. But again, we are saying we've got a big drug and alcohol problem in the county, and that we're complaining we don't have somebody for a dispensary. So I don't know why we're doing one thing and making customers for the mental health department there. So it doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Mr. Wire, go ahead.
The shortfall, $1 million shortfall.
Is that the state or is that the patients? Ms. Anthony,
You mean the, it would be the insurance companies. And it was due to like improper billing. So like documentation wasn't provided when we billed, or there was a wrong code or something like that. So they're going back to correct those errors and then resubmit the claim.
oh, thank you. Mr. Dale Diddens, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Clay's point, he makes it sound like we have a lot of residents that aren't from this area in the nursing home. Do you have a percentage of what residents are from Stevenson County and which ones aren't?
I don't have a percentage. I know that I believe the majority are from from the local area. I can certainly get that information and send it out.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Helms, go ahead.
Well, seeing as the discussion is somewhat all encompassing about the nursing home, I personally would like to move on to the next item, approval of payment to the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services. The first item is not an action item. We did not pass it out of committee. So the discussion we're having, I think, is very relevant and good. But I'm not sure to what end.
So Miss Anthony, go ahead.
Next up is the approval of payment to the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services. So we spoke about this earlier when we had the attorney online, which we passed on that option. And so now we have before us this approval to pay either the full amount or in payments. We took a consensus at committee in that it would to bring to the board, which was to do it over the 12-month payment, 12 months.
Do I have a second? By Mr. Hilton seconds that discussion. Mr. Jorges, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So where do we get this 430,000 from? You could be working banking, right? Does anybody have that answer? Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Helms.
The county is required to pay its outstanding bills and vendors. Okay, that's a statute. We have to do it. So if there are not funds available, the treasurer still has to pay it, even if it's not coming out of the nursing line. So there'll have to be interfund loans. Other options will have to be explored, but we will have to pay regardless of whether there's revenue coming in or not. If we're under contract, those bills have to be paid.
We use ARPA funds?
ARPA funds, I believe, can be used for anything.
Okay.
With an asterisk at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more discussion on Miss Anthony? Go ahead.
I just wanted to note that I will reach out. In the initial letter when we had talked about it, we did not see any clause in there about looking in for a hardship. But since speaking with the attorney, I will look into that option.
There's a cutoff date that we have. What's the cutoff date on this?
60 days from January. Is it 24th, the day of the letter? My internet's not working on my computer, so I'm kind of
I'm trying to.
limited here.
Letter here. You mean when the letter was sent to us?
When we received notification, yes,
We,
the notification date.
on January 24th?
Yep.
Okay,
So it's 60 days from January 24th, so very soon.
so it has to get done tonight or a special meeting if we have to. Okay, Mr. Helms, anything else?
Going to mention what Miss Anthony says. We definitely need to pursue the hardship avenue to look into that. The other issue that we've not really discussed tonight, but last night was discussed, that if we are not, I'm going to hold off on that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clay, go ahead.
I'm not necessarily in favor of the hardship issue. All we're doing is passing on our bills to somebody else by doing that. And if we're going to pay this bill, then we might as well pay it. Why pay interest on it? Might as well just upfront pay it and be done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So the motion was to do the 12 months payment and Mr. Hilton second, is that correct?
That's what I have. Yes.
Okay. That's, I see no more discussion on this. Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Ms. Anthony. Mr. Diddens. Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson. Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Jogurst. Ms. Baker. Mr. Helms. Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller. Mr. Clay.
No.
Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
Yes.
Ms. Quiggle.
Aye.
Mr. Hilton. Chairman Hadley.
Yes,
19-1.
19-1, that passes. Okay, go ahead to your other action item.
Thank you. Is approval of the pay increase for non-union employees. We had asked Mr. Bolt to present information to us on what he felt was needed for the nursing home to be successful. We talked about this in more than just this committee, but wages being on the rise kind of in every single market. And so that is what Mr. Bolt also suggested, which again, we have the union contract, which we'll be talking about later. But he sent out what he proposed would be appropriate to attract, recruit, and retain employees, non-union employees at Walnut Acres. All right, I'm pulling it up.
We have it in our packets if you want it. Well,
Thank you.
Yeah, she's got it now. Thank you. Thank you.
So the document that you were sent lists the revenue increase, and that's noted based on when we did the budget in October. The reimbursements have changed for a couple reasons. One, Medicaid managed care changes on a quarterly basis. So when we were doing the budget, we budgeted around $184, $196, I believe it was. But since then, that's been increased to over $230 for their reimbursement per diem. So that was added in there. And we also voted here on this board to raise the private pay per diem. So there was an increase in that revenue as well. So at the top is what you're looking at is the increase based on the original census that we did from the beginning, being 63. It was kept there. And then you're looking at the expense increase changes for non-union based on the number of employees, what the budgeted salary is, what the requested salary is, and then what the difference would be for those increases. And so that box is just the non-union and what's being presented for this motion. So I'll make a motion to get the discussion on the floor to approve the increase in non-union wages.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Hilton. Okay, discussion, Mr. Helms, go ahead.
So I'd asked in January, since this board seems to be split as to really what to do with this facility, I had asked in January at the committee meeting for Mr. Bolt to present to the full board his plan for getting this nursing home turned around. What that meant as far as revenues, expenditures. We hired him to be the professional out there to tell us how to do this. Understanding that the budget that was crafted was based on a certain level of census as of January 1. Obviously, we were not at that level, which means at some point along the line, we were going to have to exceed that number, that census number, to catch back up. which is not uncommon. It's a very common thing to do. The issue I have now, which has come up just in the last, I'd say 2 weeks, are several things. One, the issue of the state of Illinois and the funds that we have to pay back, a potential civil money penalty that is coming to this facility because of issues of non-compliance, potential litigation, which we'll be talking about later. And of course, the email that was sent out today by our finance director detailing, and I hope everyone has had a chance to see this email. I don't know if the finance director is on or not, but I'm just going to read a small excerpt from what she sent. It says, I wanted to make sure you were all aware of the current balances in the nursing center accounts. The balances in the red boxes below include the payroll and accounts payable expenses effective tomorrow, February 18th. The total for all accounts is $183,891. Please note the important upcoming expenditures. March 4th, payroll, approximately $66,000. March 18th, accounts payable, approximately $253,000. March 18th, payroll, approximately $66,000. The total for those expenses alone is $385,000. Please note, this does not include any of the unbudgeted expenses from the spreadsheet in your board packet. The situation is dire. As it stands, the nursing center cannot support day-to-day operations through March. All of this information is incredibly relevant. If we agree to raise wages at this point, all we're doing is speeding up the process for laying people off, because we have to pay the vendors. The vendors have to be paid. The state of Illinois has to be paid. The civil money penalty that's going to be coming to the county will have to be paid. And if we're not in compliance by, I believe, March 12th, and correct me if that's an incorrect date, there's the potential that any new Medicare and Medicaid claims will not be accepted by the state of Illinois, which again impacts our revenue or lack thereof. So in theory, I support having the administrator come forward and say, this is what I need to do to be successful. But there's too many other extenuating circumstances. It's not going to matter. We talk about adding a question to a referendum in 10 months or 9 months, whatever it is. Right now, we're not sure we're going to get through March. And if you have to lay people off, then you're going to have to move residents out. So I'm unfortunately, even though I asked for this to be brought forward, I am not going to be able to support it.
Okay, Mr. Clay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could someone explain to me how we could pass something like this without opening up the budget?
Oh, let me- Okay, I got your mic on.
2 years ago, and I may be a little off on my time, the current administrator, Jason Bauer, had asked that the county board consider raising the RN pay to get RNs to come work. And I believe that was in 2020. And the board did that. We never experienced it. He didn't get any applicants, but the board did raise the rate of pay. We did not increase the current RN pay, and we're not going to unless we got new RNs at that rate. But we did not reopen the budget for that. You know, you can outspend your revenue. At the end of the year, you're going to have to clean it up. And that's where you would reopen the budget.
So these are not.
They're not
Question
budgeted
set.
expenses.
These are not something that we're going to give the people that are there working right now.
No, it is. That's what's being proposed.
Well, then that's why I'm asking, how in the heck can we do this without opening up the budget? Because we're changing the budget.
Again, you can overspend as long as by the end of the year, you're in balance. It's at some point, yes, we are going to have to reopen the budget. I can't explain exactly why we don't have to reopen the budget to pass this at this point, other than you have the opportunity by the end of the fiscal year, because revenues could catch up. And as long as you're balanced, you're fine.
Well, then I think I better ask our state's attorney.
Okay.
Can we pass something like this without opening up our budget and actually making budget changes?
Well, you can't have an expenditure without a prior appropriation. I think that's what you're thinking of. I would need to look at the actual line items involved, and I know one of the issues in the nursing home is they're having a hard time finding people to hire. Now, if that's true, my guess would be that they would have some money budgeted in their line item to spend that they haven't spent. So long as they don't exceed the total amount of money budgeted for salaries at the line item or in that line item, they can do whatever they want. They give all the money to one person if they wanted to. I mean, within the confines of our union negotiations and other things like that. So, I mean, I think theoretically, and it's February, our budget began in January. So they've got a whole year's budget, until they exceed the total amount allocated for salaries in the nursing home budget. It probably wouldn't have to reopen the budget. And that may never happen depending on, if they don't have enough employees to fill out their roster. But if it did happen, then I would recommend opening the budget and reconciling that.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense to you as well, Scott? Is that?
I was just gonna say what he said.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me, but.
All right.
Okay, Miss Anthony, go ahead.
Staffing agencies cost about double from what you're paying, like a CNA, their union, but also RNs. So we're using staffing agencies to fill shifts to make sure that we're in compliance in ratio based on our census. And so, doing a survey of what other RNs are making in the area, that's what our administrator is saying. In order to make that to be in line with the market, we need to increase wages to reduce staffing agencies. So, that's the theory and the thinking behind some of this, other than being able to stay in line with the market. But we're using staffing agencies. And so we're already paying more than what we're budgeting for just based on the staffing agencies. If we increase the wage by a couple dollars to be more in line with the market, it'll actually reduce the cost in the long run at the end of the year.
Mr. Copeland, go ahead.
How much are you spending on the staffing agencies per se?
I don't have that number. It's not broken down in the budgetary status report. It goes in the line item that they come from.
I don't know the total amount, but this board approved using of the agency, and I believe the RNs were at $75 an hour.
Correct.
Yeah, and that was an unbudgeted expense.
Okay, Mr. Clay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love when somebody starts talking about the marketplace, because the marketplace sets wages, but the marketplace also determines whether your facility needs to stay open. And there is no reason for this facility to be open when when all the nursing homes in the county are at half capacity. That means a bunch of them need to shut down. There's place for these people to go. And so that's the marketplace. The marketplace is saying, we don't need all those nursing homes anymore. We don't need all those rooms. That's the marketplace today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Miller, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, did Mr. Bolt communicate these potential raises to the people in the facility?
I am not sure of that.
Okay. As the union raises that we'll be discussing later, though, those have been obviously communicated to the people in the union.
Correct.
Okay. So we have no idea the ramifications of if we don't approve these, if these non-union people may walk. Since we're going to give the union people a raise. Just a discussion item.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miller. I see no more discussion on this. Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Ms. Anthony.
Aye.
Mr. Diddens. Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson. Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Jogerst. Ms. Baker. Mr. Helms. Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller.
No.
Mr. Clay. Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
Yes.
Ms. Quiggle.
No.
Mr. Hilton. Chairman Hadley.
No.
Fails 16-14.
What is the vote again?
Failed.
Oh, it failed 6-14. Any information out of your committee?
Don't give me anything else there, Scott. Yes, thank you. Unfortunately, there was someone that decided that they would take a BB gun and shot out the windows in the nursing home van on, what day is it?
Found
Thursday?
it yesterday.
Tuesday night to Wednesday morning. And so that's been winterized, I think is how it was phrased, until we can get it repaired. The deductible for that on that vehicle is $5,000. The window repair is a little under $2,000. So we'll be working on getting that. It's unfortunate that someone decided to do that to the property. Also, we've had the IDPH, Illinois Department of Public Health at Walnut Acres a few times. One time there was a finding based on infection control and improper use of PPE. There was another complaint recently but there was no findings on that one. So we are waiting to hear from the state on what the total fine will be based on the one that was founded. It is, until we get into substantial compliance, it is the fine compounds per day. We've worked with IPMG to write the plan of correction. So that is hoping to be submitted tomorrow, or the initial thing's been improved, but there's, you have to show that you're doing it. And so those things are happening. And we're hoping to get all of that evidence in tomorrow. There has been a nursing consultant that's come in specifically for infection control. So a lot of education has been occurring over the last 2 days based on that. I believe that's all, unless someone else has a minority report. I think everything else will be discussed in executive session.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Newton, no action, but any information out of your committee?
No, but I do want to share one bit of point of interest or information. On the ARPA funds, as our finance chair made mention of, it's possible that the salaries, I won't say the fines, but for sure the salaries can be covered this year by part of our ARPA funds that we have, and maybe the fines, but I'll have to do a deeper dive to find out whether or not that is an allowable expense. But they have opened the door so wide to utilize the ARPA funds that I would suggest that we take a deeper look at utilizing that if we can, rather than having to pay the full effect of whatever our fine is from from the years past. So that's all I have. And hopefully the committee can take a deeper look at that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miller, any information out of your committee?
Yes, Mr.
Hold on,
Chair.
Mr. Schroeder has the,
Want to make a comment on that last report. I would be vehemently opposed to throwing ARPA money at those fines. That would be a tremendous waste of those funds and not at all what they were intended for. What those were intended for were for capital improvement projects like the HVAC project that we just voted down. They're approved for roads. Actually, because we got less than 10 million, essentially we can use them for almost anything, but using them for fines, what a waste.
okay, thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Miller, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, Public Works is doing a deep dive into animal control. Mr. Diddens and I are getting together to create a plan going forward to proactively address falling revenue in that department and streamline it going forward. Also, the Soil and Water Conservation District is having their annual tree sale and fish sale. I have tree order forms. Anybody interested, they need to be turned in by March the 4th.
Okay, is that it, Mr. Miller?
That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll move to public comment. Anybody out in the public want to make comment? State your name for the record.
Can't hear.
Could you get closer to the mic or? Well, I got it on here. Is it? I got it on. You sure you popped the? Yeah.
My name is Stephanie David from Roxbury. I'm a second-year senior in high school. I wasn't going to do this to you guys tonight. You had especially,
Can't hear.
Is that mic even working too? What's going on with these mics? I got them. Hold on.
Now he's on.
Try it now. I don't know what's going on with these.
No. Somebody needs to let her have a chair.
Did you push a button? Yeah, just that'll work. If you can come on up to the podium, that'll be fine. I don't know what's going on with these mics. Yeah.
good job, Chairman Hadley.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Kathy DeHaven. I am from Rock City, Illinois, and I have a senior at Dakota High School. You have all had an incredibly full night, so I will not take much of your time. I just wanted to touch base with you. As you may or may not know, a downstate judge from Sangamon County ruled in favor for over 140 school districts in Illinois 2 weeks ago by issuing a TRO against our governor, thus granting those 140 school districts local control over optional mask wearing, quarantining for our students, and mandated testing on our unvaccinated staff for those 140 school districts. On page 28 of the footnotes on the TRO, the judge also granted every other school district in the state not named in the suit to have local control of their districts on whether or not to follow the TRO or the mandates set forth by our governor. Currently, there are over 800 school districts in Illinois, and almost 600 of them have decided to follow the TRO granted by the judge and not follow the mandates by our governor. Our governor was quick to respond to the TRO by asking for a reversal of that TRO, and we await for that result to come back from an appellate court. On Monday of this past week, IDPH tried to slip a quick one in and attempted for a reversal on the judge's TRO by asking JCAR to reverse that TRO. JCAR came back on Monday with a vote of 9-0 in favor of the school districts. Our governor is coming back swinging. He's gone to the appellate court and asked for reversal and is fighting hard to get it. We are fighting hard back at him to keep the momentum going and keep moving forward on behalf of our staff and our students. For 2 weeks now, Dakota has gone following the TRO, and we have had unmasked students smiling and staff who are back to work and without the threat of quarantining students or having to undergo mandated testing. Now the work has begun on behalf of the students who are finding this a mental and emotional challenge. For example, a kindergartner that comes to school without a mask for the very first time goes home and tells mom, I want my mask back because I'm afraid because my teacher can see my face. We had a second grader that walked in crying because, may I continue?
I'll give you 15 seconds.
A second grader that came in crying because other kids around him were not wearing the masks. Freeport School District needs the board to get behind them. On behalf of Freeport School District, as their neighbor, I ask you to get behind that district who is not following the TRO and whose teachers are being escorted out of the school district buildings because they are not wearing masks. It is illegal. It is not right. My question for you as the county board is, will the board still consider, at one time we had asked, creating a committee to look into the workings of our health department and how it is managed and how it is accountable, so that when the governor continues to keep coming back swinging to get back his one way from a one man show in Springfield to keep these mandates, to continue them, will you come back and will you help support our school districts and our students in keeping this momentum moving forward? We would so appreciate it and so appreciate what you guys do and do for our county. Please get behind us and help us to continue this momentum and keep it moving forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, anybody else from the audience? I see nobody from the audience on Zoom now. Please raise your hand if you're interested in doing a public comment. You see anybody raising their hands? Okay, we will move on to new business. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Clay. Well, that mic has to be, hold on. Oh, well, then I got a new battery for it, but go ahead, Mr. Clay, for this time. Yep, go right ahead, Mr. Clay, this time only because of mic problems.
That's fine. I'll finish my presentation. Now let me put it into its practical application. We have a going far beyond his prescribed authority governor in this state. His unconstitutional power now reaches to our state judge, who declares masks for everyone entering the courthouse. Our state judge, against his own oath of office, unconstitutionally orders masking for everyone. Why? His $212,000 salary comes from the state. The governor reaches to our state's attorney and tells him to prosecute the Church of Jesus Christ if it doesn't close its doors. Recall a house of worship in Lena, Illinois. Against his oath of office, he says, yes, sir. Why? Because his $183,000 salary comes from the state. Is this what we want to happen to our control of our county sheriff? When our reaching outside the limits of his jurisdiction governor reaches down to our sheriff and says, I want every non-essential business closed, every person outside and inside masked, or I want them arrested. What do you think our sheriff is going to do when his paycheck is coming from the state? Let me remind you of our board's decision by default not to protect the people of our county against our presumptuous governor. An Illinois county that did stand and protect the people that they represent was Madison County. In May of 2020, when our governor ordered all non-essential businesses to shut their doors, the Madison County Board said, not in this county, you don't. Our businesses are staying open. The governor threatened to pull all their state and federal funds from them. The board stood resolute. We will do no such thing in this county. The threats continued from the governor for several days. After this, the state police of Illinois came out with a statement saying it was unconstitutional for them to enter into any county and they would not arrest any businessman that kept his business open. Then the governor rescinded that order. Madison County never shut down their businesses. Their board protected the people and the businessmen they represent. Now, concerning this legislation on our sheriffs in this state, this bill should be stopped. Are we willing to sell our birthright, our heritage, our inheritance of liberty for 30 shekels of silver? Every board member here should do his or her duty and contact our state representative Chesney and State Senator Stewart and ask them to defeat this legislation, Senate Bill 3876. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clay. Okay, then we will move on to new business. And both of these items coincide with each other. One gets past that or one. So we're. Okay. Okay. The reason why this is getting amended is one is Juneteenth, that's a federal holiday, and the other one is Election Day, and that's a state holiday. And if this gets passed tonight, the county clerk wanted to move the board meetings because it would be the night of the election, and so the other one would change the schedule from moving the board meeting from the 8th to the 15th and the 22nd to the 29th on the budget. So we can pass both of them, but let's just take one at a time. Can I get a motion to approve the amending of the resolution establishing the holiday? Okay, by Mr. Miller, do I have a second? Second by Mr. Newton. Any discussion on this? Okay, Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Mr. Miller. Mr. Clay. No. Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
Yes.
Ms. Quiggle.
Aye.
Mr. Hilton. Ms. Anthony. Mr. Diddens.
No.
Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson. Mr. Schroeder.
No.
Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire.
No.
Mr. Jogerst.
No.
Ms. Baker. Mr. Helms.
Aye.
Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt.
No.
Chairman Hadley.
Yes.
Passes 12-8.
Passes 12-8. Can I get a motion to change the meeting calendar for November? By Mr. Dale Diddens and second by Mr. Flegel. Any discussion? I see none. Madam Clerk, call roll, please.
Mr. Diddens. Mr. Copeland. Mr. Tombson. Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Flegel. Mr. Wire. Mr. Jogerst. Ms. Baker. Mr. Helms. Ms. Brashaw. Mr. Brandt. Mr. Miller. Mr. Clay. Mr. Newton. Mr. Bush. Ms. Abear.
Yes.
Ms. Quiggle.
Aye.
Mr. Hilton. Ms. Anthony. Chairman Hadley.
Aye.
Passes 20-0.
Passes 20-0. At this time, we're going to move into executive session. Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Schroeder. My apologies. Go ahead.
First of all, I just want to congratulate the Aquin Lady Bulldogs. They won the regional championship in Durand in girls basketball tonight. So congratulations to those young ladies. Second thing I have, based on what happened here tonight, I would appreciate any input from anybody on the county board about addressing some of the needs we have on buildings we own around the county. The fact of the matter is, we still have a boiler in the public safety building that provides 911 service that's past end of life and could fail at any moment. We have HVAC units at the jail that are also out of date. We were told at our committee by the Helm Group that the refrigeration alone is thousands of dollars if we have a problem because it's refrigerant that's no longer used in the industry. We also have HVAC equipment here in this building that has passed end of life. These are all issues that we're either going to just continue to ignore and put Band-Aids on, or we're going to take action. So it's a little bit confusing. So I would take some input from anybody on the board on how we're going to tackle these issues going forward because they're not going to go away. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on new business? Okay, go ahead.
One other thing along with that, if you will remember, part of that Helm Group project was putting a generator at this building, which we don't have. And it's kind of crazy to think that in a building that provides essential services like this to the community, that we don't have a way to power this building, run the air filtration systems, the air handlers, in if there's a power outage. That's really unfathomable. Also consider that this county board approved an expenditure somewhere north of $300,000, I think it was, for IT equipment. And at the time, we had talked about putting it in this building for security reasons. Can't do that without a generator. So that's some other things we're going to have to think about going forward.
Okay, is that it, Mr. Schroeder? Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll be moving in executive session for 5 ILC